People think they know Keanu Reeves, the star, the millionaire, the actor who has it all. But behind the cameras lies a story no one expected. A forgotten promise, a hidden letter, and a truth that would break even the strongest heart. This is not about fame. This is about pain, resilience, and the shocking secret that shaped his humble life. People always thought they knew everything about Keanu Reeves. They saw him on the big screen, they watched him walk red carpets, and they read stories about his success. But what nobody expected was the hidden truth behind the way he lived. Because while most millionaires chased luxury, he was quietly building a life of humility, silence, and unseen battles. And it all started on one quiet night when a stranger followed him down the street. The cameras were gone. The fans were gone. Keanu walked alone in the dim evening light, his hands in his pockets, dressed in the same old jacket he had worn for years. From a distance, people would never guess he had millions in his account. And maybe that was the point. Because behind every simple choice he made was a memory of loss, pain, and an unusual strength that came from surviving it all. That night, as he stopped near a small cafe, he noticed a man standing in the shadows. The man's eyes were fixed on him, not with the curiosity of a fan, but with something sharper, like he carried a story of his own. Keanu stepped inside the cafe, ordered the cheapest cup of coffee, and sat by the window. The man followed quietly, sitting at the far end of the room. For most people, this would be a moment of fear. For Keanu, it was a moment of reflection. He had seen enough darkness in life to recognize when someone else was carrying it. He stirred his coffee slowly, and his mind drifted back to the past. The streets of Toronto. The days when he slept on friends' couches. The times when he had no car, no fame, and no promises of tomorrow. He remembered how his mother worked long hours just to keep food on the table. He remembered the silence of his father's absence. All those memories shaped the man he was now, the millionaire who never lived like one. The stranger finally moved closer. His voice was shaky, his clothes worn out. "Are you really who they say you are?" he asked. Keanu looked up, calm but curious. "Depends who they say I am," he answered softly. The man smiled sadly. "They say you are rich, but you don't look like it. They say you have everything, but I see something missing in your eyes." For a moment, Keanu did not speak. Because the truth was, the man was right. Success had given him comfort, but it had not healed the emptiness that loss had left behind. The death of his best friend, the pain of losing loved ones, the nights he spent alone with only memories for company, those were scars that no amount of money could erase. Keanu leaned forward. "Maybe what you see missing is what keeps me grounded. Money can build walls, but humility keeps doors open." His words were simple, but the stranger stared at him like he had just heard something life-changing. The cafe was silent, only the sound of soft music playing in the background. Keanu continued, "I don't need to show the world what I have. I need to remember who I am without it. That is the only way I can survive." The stranger lowered his head, his hands trembling. He whispered, "I lost my family. I lost my job. I have nothing left." Keanu's heart tightened. It was like looking into a mirror of his own past, a time when he too had felt like the world was slipping away. Instead of offering pity, Keanu offered respect. He placed a few bills on the table, not as charity, but as a silent gesture of kindness. Then he stood up and said, "Sometimes the hardest thing in life is not surviving the storm, but remembering that the storm does not last forever." The man looked at him with teary eyes, and in that moment a seed of hope was planted. Keanu walked away into the night, his simple jacket brushing against the cold air, his steps steady but heavy with thoughts. He knew this was not the last time his past would echo in unexpected ways. The shocking truth behind Keanu's life was not just his wealth. It was how he carried his pain with grace, how he turned scars into lessons, and how he reminded strangers that humility could be more powerful than fame. But this was only the beginning. Because the next day, a story from his past would resurface, dragging him back to a moment he had kept hidden for years. A moment that would test everything he believed about kindness, resilience, and respect. The next morning, Keanu woke up to a soft beam of daylight slipping through the thin curtains of his modest apartment. For most millionaires, Mornings began with assistants, luxury breakfasts, or phone calls about business deals. For him, mornings began with silence, a cup of black coffee, and a walk through the city streets where no one expected to see him. But this morning was different. As he opened the door, a small folded letter was lying on the floor. It had no name on the outside, no address, no clue about who had left it. He bent down, picked it up, and felt a strange chill run through his hands. Inside, the words were written in uneven handwriting. Your past is not finished. What you left behind is waiting for you. Keanu read it again, slowly, his chest tightening. The words were simple, but they pulled him back to a chapter of his life he rarely spoke about. He sat down at the small wooden table, the same one he had kept for years, and held the paper as if it carried a weight no one else could see. He remembered a face, a young boy he had once promised to help. Years ago, when Keanu was struggling, he had met a child in a hospital who was battling a rare illness. The boy had looked at him with eyes full of dreams, asking him to never give up on kindness. Keanu had promised to visit again, but life had taken him away. Films, commitments, endless traveling. And in the storm of success, that promise had been lost. The letter felt like a ghost, reminding him of the weight of broken promises. He put on his old jacket and walked out. The city was alive, cars rushing, people shouting, children laughing on the sidewalks. But to him, everything sounded distant. He kept thinking about the boy, about whether the child had survived, about whether the family had waited for him to return. Questions he had buried for years suddenly stood tall before him. As he walked down the street, another unexpected moment pulled him deeper. A young woman stopped him near a bookstore. She looked nervous, holding a notebook close to her chest. "Are you Keanu?" she asked softly. When he nodded, she quickly added, "My brother met you once, in the hospital. He said you promised to come back. He said you were different from the others, that you really cared." Keanu froze. The words pierced through him like a silent blade. This was no coincidence. She was the sister of the boy he had remembered. Her eyes were filled with something between pain and hope. "He waited for you," she whispered. Every day he waited. His throat went dry. He wanted to speak, but no words came. He felt the weight of his silence, the years he had let slip away. Finally, he asked, "Where is he now?" Her lips trembled before she answered. "He is gone." The street around them blurred. Sounds faded. He stood there, feeling the ground slip beneath him. The boy was gone. The promise was broken forever. Yet, in that same moment, he realized something deeper. Life was giving him another chance, not to erase the past, but to honor it. The sister handed him the notebook. "He wrote letters," she said. "He wrote to you. He believed you would read them one day." Keanu held the notebook with both hands. The cover was worn out, the pages inside filled with small handwriting. As he flipped through the first page, his eyes stung. "Dear Keanu," it began, "if you are reading this, it means you remembered. Thank you for not forgetting me." Keanu closed the notebook and looked up at the sky. His heart was heavy, but it was also alive with a new fire. This was not just about regret. This was about resilience, about carrying forward the lesson the boy had left behind. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. He would have to face his guilt, his failures, and his silence. But he also knew that kindness, even delayed, could still change lives. That night, Keanu sat alone in his apartment, the notebook open on the table. Every word pulled him deeper into the boy's world. Dreams of becoming strong, of helping others, of living without fear. It was more than a notebook. It was a reminder that promises live beyond time. He whispered quietly into the empty room, "I will not fail you again." What Keanu did not know was that the next day would bring an even greater shock. Because hidden in those letters was not just memory. It was a truth about his own past that he had never faced. Keanu barely slept that night. The notebook lay open on the table, its fragile pages whispering stories of a boy who was gone too soon. Each word felt alive, carrying a voice that refused to be silenced by time. Somewhere between the trembling handwriting and the innocent dreams, Keanu began to sense that the letters were not only about hope, but about him too. As if the boy had seen a truth Keanu himself had ignored. When dawn arrived, the city was still quiet. Keanu poured himself a cup of coffee, but he couldn't bring himself to drink it. His eyes returned again and again to a particular page. The boy had written, "One day you will learn why you were chosen to meet me. It was never by accident." Keanu's hands shook as he traced those words. He remembered their first meeting in that hospital room. He had been filming nearby, exhausted, unsure if acting was even his true calling anymore. The boy had smiled at him, saying, "You don't know it yet, but you're meant to carry other people's stories." That line echoed louder now, as if fate had planted it years ago. Keanu closed the notebook and leaned back. He thought about the stranger in the cafe the night before, the mysterious letter left at his door, and now these writings. It felt like his past was reaching forward, stitching itself into his present in ways he could not ignore. As the morning light grew stronger, he made a decision. He would visit the boy's family. He needed to face them, not as a star, not as a millionaire, but as a man who had once failed to return. He found the address written at the back of the notebook, a small house at the edge of the city, nearly forgotten by time. When he arrived, the house looked tired, with peeling paint and a rusty gate. He hesitated at the doorstep, afraid of the silence inside. But before he could knock, the door opened. The sister stood there, her eyes swollen from years of tears, yet carrying a quiet strength. She didn't look surprised to see him. Instead, she stepped aside and said softly, "Come in. He would have wanted you here." Inside, the house smelled faintly of old books and fading memories. Photos lined the walls, pictures of the boy smiling despite the tubes in his arms, his eyes always filled with light. Keanu's chest ached as he looked at them. "He kept talking about you," the sister said. "Every time he wrote in that notebook, he said one day you would understand." She handed Keanu a box. Inside were drawings, letters, and one envelope sealed with care. It had his name on it. His heart pounded as he opened it. The letter inside read, "Dear Keanu, I know life is heavy for you. I know you carry sadness that no one sees. But I want you to remember something. Your pain is not your enemy. It is your guide. It will teach you how to heal others, the way you healed me with just your kindness that day." Keanu sat in silence, his eyes burning. He thought of all the nights he had walked alone, all the times he had hidden his grief behind a calm smile. The boy had seen through him in a single meeting, and now, even after death, his words were opening wounds Keanu had buried. Suddenly, the sister placed a small photograph on the table. "He wanted you to have this," she said. It was a picture of the boy holding a small toy car. Keanu recognized it immediately. It was his own gift from that hospital visit. A cheap toy he had bought at a nearby store, thinking it was nothing, but the boy had treasured it as if it was gold. Keanu held the photo close. The room grew heavy with silence, but it wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of something waiting to be revealed. Then the sister spoke words that made his heart stop. "There's something else. The night before he passed, he told me he had discovered something about you. He said your lives were connected in ways you didn't know." Keanu's pulse raced. "Connected how?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The sister shook her head. He never explained. "He just said the truth would find you when you were ready to carry it." Keanu stood there, the photograph trembling in his hands. What truth could a dying boy have known about him? And why did it feel like every step he took now was pulling him closer to something that could change the way he saw his entire life? As he left the house, the notebook and photograph pressed against his chest. The city no longer felt familiar. Every face he passed, every sound of laughter or sorrow, felt like a sign. His past was not finished, and somewhere hidden in those pages, somewhere in the memory of a child who believed in him more than he believed in himself, lay a secret waiting to break open. The shocking truth behind his humble life was no longer just about how he lived. It was about why. And the next step would take him into a revelation he was not prepared for. That night, Keanu couldn't escape the boy's words. He sat on the edge of his bed, the photograph in one hand, the notebook in the other. The city outside roared with lights and voices, but inside his apartment there was only silence, thick and heavy, broken only by the sound of his uneven breathing. He whispered to himself, "Connected? How could we be connected?" He turned to the last pages of the notebook. his fingers trembling as if they already knew something was waiting for him. And there it was. A page torn, edges rough, but still holding a message written in shaky handwriting. Keanu, when you came to me, I felt something strange. My mother told me a story once, about a man who helped her long before I was born. She said he saved her life in a time of darkness. I think that man was you. Keanu froze. The words blurred for a moment, his mind refusing to accept them. The boy's mother, his past. He searched his memory, going back years, back to the time when he was young, restless, and still unknown. Then it hit him. He remembered a winter night in Toronto, long before fame found him. He had seen a young woman standing alone at a bus stop, shivering in the cold. She had no money, no warm clothes, and her eyes carried the same desperation he had once felt. Without thinking, he had given her his scarf, bought her a hot drink, and slipped the last of his cash into her hand. He never knew her name. He never saw her again. Until now, his breath caught in his throat. Could it be? Could that woman have been the boy's mother? The timeline matched. The possibility was undeniable. He gripped the notebook tighter, his heart pounding. If it was true, then the boy wasn't just a stranger he met in a hospital. He was a life born from a moment of kindness Keanu had almost forgotten. The next morning, he couldn't resist. He returned to the small house, his steps quick and restless. The sister opened the door again, her eyes filled with questions. "I need to speak to your mother," he said firmly. She hesitated, then nodded, guiding him to a quiet room at the back of the house. There, an older woman sat in a wooden chair, a blanket wrapped around her frail shoulders. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with years of sorrow and strength. But when her eyes met Keanu's, they widened with recognition. "It is you," she whispered. The air grew heavy. Keanu stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Years ago, a winter night, I saw you at a bus stop. I gave you my scarf." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded slowly. "Yes, you saved me that night. I was alone, cold, and ready to give up. But your kindness, it gave me strength. I never forgot your face. And later, when my son was born, I told him about you. I told him he was alive because of a stranger's compassion." Keanu's knees weakened. He gripped the edge of the chair for support. The boy wasn't just someone he had promised to help. He was a living reminder of how a single act of kindness could ripple through time, creating lives, creating stories, creating connections no one could ever predict. The mother reached out, her hand trembling as it touched his. "He believed you were meant to carry his dream forward. He believed you were chosen to continue what he could not finish." Keanu bowed his head, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. All the years he had lived with guilt, all the times he had wondered if his life truly mattered beyond the screen, it all collided in this moment. He was more than an actor. He was a bridge between stories, between pain and healing, between despair and hope. When he left the house, the sun was setting, painting the sky with deep shades of gold and red. But inside Keanu's heart, a storm was rising. Because in the box of letters, one envelope remained unopened. It had been sealed differently, as if the boy had wanted it to be the last message Keanu would read. He held it in his hands that night, staring at the unbroken seal. Something about it made his chest tighten. This was not just another letter. This felt like the answer to everything. But answers often come with consequences, and Keanu knew that once he opened it, there would be no going back. The shocking truth behind his humble life was not just about humility. It was about fate, about choices, about how the smallest gesture could shape destinies. And as his fingers hovered over the seal of that final letter, he understood something. This was not just the story of a boy. This was the story of his own soul. The envelope sat on the table like a weight Keanu could not move. The room was dark except for the faint glow of a streetlight spilling through the window. He had opened dozens of the boy's letters already, but this one felt different. Its paper was thicker, its seal pressed firmly, almost as if the boy wanted to make sure it survived time itself. Keanu stared at it for hours, his hands trembling each time he thought about breaking the seal. He whispered to himself, "Why does this feel like the moment I've been avoiding all my life?" Finally, just before midnight, he tore it open. The letter inside was shorter than the others, but the words carved themselves into his heart. "Dear Keanu, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I know you think you failed me, but you didn't. You saved me before I was even born. My mother told me how you helped her, how your kindness gave her the courage to live another day. That is why I exist. You gave me life without even knowing it, and now I give you my dream. Do not carry guilt anymore. Carry me instead. Live as if I am still here, beside you. Keanu dropped the letter, his chest tightening with grief and awe. Tears blurred his vision, but for the first time in years, they were not only tears of sorrow, they were tears of release. He realized the boy never wanted him to drown in regret. He wanted him to rise, to use his voice, his presence, his story, to bring light where darkness lived. But as Keanu wiped his face, he noticed something else at the bottom of the page. Smaller handwriting, rushed, almost hidden. If you are ready, find the place where we first met. There you will discover the truth no one else knows. Keanu sat back, his pulse racing. The hospital. The sterile room with white walls and the quiet beeping of machines. It had been years, but he remembered the exact ward, the exact window where the boy had once sat looking out at the sky. Could there really be something left for him there? The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, he walked through the empty streets toward the hospital. He wore the same old jacket, his steps steady but heavy with anticipation. When he reached the building, it felt colder than he remembered. He passed the front desk, the hallways, the rooms filled with echoes of lives once fought for and lost. He found the ward, room 307. Inside, the walls were freshly painted, the machines replaced, the bed neatly made. But the energy was the same. The silence carried the boy's memory like it had been waiting. Keanu closed his eyes, standing in the center of the room, and whispered, "I came back." Then he noticed something strange. Near the window, tucked behind the radiator, was a small wooden box. It was covered in dust, but not untouched. Someone had hidden it there long ago. With careful hands, Keanu pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs, drawings, and one more letter sealed with tape. But this time, the handwriting wasn't the boy's. It was the mother's. His hands shook as he unfolded it. "Keanu," it began, "if you are reading this, it means my son trusted you until his last breath. What I never told him, and what I must now tell you, is that you and I are connected in a way deeper than he ever guessed. Years ago, before that winter night when you gave me your scarf, I saw you perform in a small theater. You were still unknown, struggling, but your role touched something inside me. That performance gave me strength to believe again in my own life. You don't realize it, but you have been shaping destinies long before the world called you a star." Keanu's vision blurred again, his body trembling as he held the letter against his chest. The boy was right. None of it had been an accident. Every path, every meeting, every act of kindness had been weaving together into something larger than himself. As he looked around the hospital room, memories flooded back, the boy's laughter, his small hands clutching the toy car, the hope in his eyes even when pain tried to steal it away. Keanu whispered, "I see it now. I was meant to carry you." But before he could leave, he noticed something else inside the wooden box, a small key. Taped to it was a note. "One last place, Keanu. One last truth." He held the key in his palm, his heart beat louder than the silence around him. Another door was waiting, another revelation hidden, and deep down he knew this final step would break him, or save him forever. The shocking truth behind his humble life was about to reach its deepest layer, one he had never dared to imagine. Keanu held the small key in his palm all night, unable to let it go. Its metal felt cold, heavier than it should have been, as if it carried not just weight, but memory. He turned it over again and again, staring at the note taped to it. One last place, Keanu. One last truth. He barely slept. When the first light of morning touched the window, he stood, put on his jacket, and stepped out into the quiet streets. He had no idea what door this key belonged to, but something inside told him the answer was already within reach. He thought of the boy, of the notebook, of the letters, of the hospital. And then a faint memory returned, something the sister had mentioned once in passing. The boy used to spend his weekends in a small community library near the edge of the city. He said it was his secret place where stories gave him hope when medicine could not. Keanu's chest tightened. He knew the key belonged there. The library stood in silence when he arrived, its old bricks faded, its windows lined with dust. Inside, the air smelled of paper and time. The librarian, an elderly man with kind eyes, looked up and recognized him, but said nothing. Instead, he simply nodded, as if he already knew why Keanu was there. Keanu walked through the aisles slowly, his fingers brushing against the spines of worn-out books. Finally, in the corner near a small wooden desk, he found it. A cabinet with a rusty lock. His heart raced as he placed the key into it. It turned smoothly, as if it had been waiting only for him. Inside, there was a single envelope, thicker than the rest, sealed with careful hands. On the front, in the boy's handwriting, were the words, "For when you are ready to see yourself." Keanu sat down at the desk, the envelope trembling in his hands. He tore it open slowly, almost afraid of what waited inside. The letter read, "Dear Keanu, I know you wonder why our paths crossed, why you were the one to carry this weight. The truth is, you were never just an actor to me. You were proof that pain can become strength. I studied your life, your struggles, the way you lost so much but still chose kindness. I wanted to be like you. I wanted to live with that same courage. But there is something more. You think your life is only about survival, but it is about connection. The night you helped my mother, you saved me before I even existed. When you visited me, you gave me the hope to keep going a little longer. Every time you choose humility over pride, you remind the world that love is greater than fame. You do not just carry your own story, Keanu. You carry all of ours. If you are reading this, it means you remembered me. It means you still care, and that is enough. Do not cry for me, live for me. Tell the world the truth, that being humble does not mean being weak. It means being strong enough to never forget where you came from, and strong enough to keep giving even when no one is watching. I will always be with you, not in sorrow, but in the quiet moments when you choose kindness instead of silence." Keanu closed the letter, his tears falling freely. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. The guilt that had haunted him began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet peace. The boy had not left him with regret. He had left him with a mission. As he left the library, the sun broke through the clouds, warm and golden, spilling across the streets. People passed by, some recognizing him, some not. But for once, it didn't matter. He no longer walked with the weight of who he had lost. He walked with the strength of who he had found. In the days that followed, Keanu began to share more of his story, not as a celebrity, but as a human being who had stumbled, fallen, and risen again. He visited hospitals. He spoke quietly to children fighting their own battles. He supported strangers in silence. He did it not for the world's praise, but for the boy who had believed in him enough to write those letters. And somewhere, in the invisible spaces between memory and hope, Keanu felt the boy walking beside him, not as a ghost, not as regret, but as a friend whose dream he now carried forward. The shocking truth behind Keanu's humble millionaire lifestyle was never about money at all. It was about the scars he carried, the kindness he gave, and the lives he touched in silence. It was about resilience born from pain, respect built through humility, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest wealth a man can have is the love he leaves behind. And in that truth, Keanu finally found peace.